You enjoy podcasts. We know because you're listening to one. Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. We love podcasts too, so much so that in addition to providing you with the great episode you're listening to, we also help businesses, brands, and even individuals produce their podcasts. MPN Studios offers podcast consulting and production services to help you get you or your business its very own podcast. We've helped dozens of smart people, advertising agencies, and brands develop podcasts. All you do is record your content or interview. We take that and deliver a professionally produced audio or video episode complete with show notes, transcriptions, and even promotional clips to use on social media. And our monthly subscription prices are hard to beat. If you or your company are jonesing to have your own podcast to establish thought leadership, drive business leads, or just have fun talking about your business or topic of choice, we'd love to help. Learn more at marketingpodcasts.net/studio. That's marketingpodcasts.net/studio. You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Heather Eck hosts an amazing show called Your Radiant Spirit. Heather, tell listeners about the show.
What if the colors you're drawn to, the creative urges you ignore, and the quiet intuitive hits you brush off are actually trying to tell you something? Your Radiant Spirit is the podcast that helps you listen and live with greater clarity and purpose.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find and subscribe at heathereck.com/yourradiantspirit on marketingpodcast.net or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
Welcome to Your Radiant Spirit, a space for the conversations and colors that help you see yourself more clearly. I'm Heather Eck, an intuitive artist and guide, and I believe your soul speaks in the ways the mind can't always put into words, through color, energy, and the stories your body holds. This show is where we explore those messages. Through personal stories, deep conversations, and creative insight, we'll uncover what's been hidden, release what no longer serves, and begin to imagine what's possible when you live in full alignment with who you're meant to be. What you hear here is more than inspiration, it's an opening, a chance to feel the shift that could change everything. So take a deep breath, open your heart, and let's step into today's conversation. Hello and welcome back to Your Radiant Spirit. I am so happy to be back with you guys. Before we dive in today, I have some really exciting news to share with you about spirit portraits. They are opening back up, and if you've been feeling called to receive a personalized painting of your soul's color, now is the time. A spirit portrait is an intuitive painting I create just for you, and it carries messages of love, healing, and peace. They are truly one of a kind, and spots are limited. If you've been here for a while, you know I have not offered these in a long time. So I've modified the process. I've made it richer. I've made it more personal. I've made it more elevated just for you. So to get on the wait list, all you have to do is send me a DM on Instagram. Just message me the word waitlist over at Heather Eck Artist, and you'll be the first to know. On today's episode, this is so exciting because I'm joined by two remarkable women, Cheri Torres, who is a PhD, and Jackie Stavros, who are the co-founders of the CWH Institute and co-authors of the best-selling book, Conversations Worth Having, using Appreciative Inquiry to fuel productive and meaningful engagement. I have a copy of their book. It is fantastic. You are not going to want to miss this. These two have spent decades discovering that the quality of our conversations with others, with ourselves, is literally the key to human potential, to our well-being and connection. We talk about what appreciative inquiry actually is, how to ask better questions, and how to show up in your relationships with more curiosity, compassion, and possibility. This one really lit me up, and I think it's going to light you up too. So let's get into it. Cheri and Jackie, thank you so much for being here with me this morning. It's so nice to meet you both.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. I'm happy to meet you. I'd love to hear your origin story. How did you guys meet? How did you start your work together?
Jackie, you want to tell that story?
Sure. Let me tell that story. So Cheri and I both were introduced to something called Appreciative Inquiry about the same time in different places. So it probably was 1995. And Cheri and I met up. I want to say it was right after Cheri 9/11. We met in Annapolis, Maryland, your end of the country, Heather. And we were both interested in taking appreciative inquiry. We call it the other AI out there. And how could we take this into everyday living? And that's what we were both very interested in doing. And appreciative inquiry is valuing the best in people. It's the way you ask questions. And we had both done it in a business sense, but how could we do it in an everyday sense? So that's how our paths we met up. We were at a conference and we both were inspired to figure this out. So over about a 2 or 3 years of getting to know each other, we wrote this book called Dynamic Relationships Using Appreciative Inquiry in Everyday Living. And we thought we had it. And that was like 2004, 2005. And we stayed in contact. Cheri can tell you a little bit about the work she did with Mobile Team Challenge. She would come visit my university and work with my students, which were traditional and non-traditional. And we fast forward about, I want to say it was about 10 years, and we're like, let's do a second edition of dynamic relationships. But we knew something was kind of off. How do we bring appreciative inquiry into daily living was still kind of our mission. And we approached a publisher called Barrett Kohler, who has a beautiful mission, creating ideas and environments that work for all. And they were very interested in what we were doing with appreciative inquiry. And the president, Steve Parasante, said to us, you know, I don't think it is about the relationships. And he kept coaching us along. And when we finally came to a realization that it was through our conversations is what sparks well-being and resilience in you. So we learned in writing the second edition that it's the power of our conversations. So that's our origin story, how we came together. So we came together. The book, as you know, is called Conversations Worth Having, Use an Appreciative Inquiry to Fuel Productivity and Engagement. And that was a gift. And the world just kept pulling us in to say, would you do training? Would you work? So we really nailed how you can bring this appreciative inquiry into conversations. I mean, think about it. How much time in a day do you spend talking to yourself and talking with others?
Mm-hmm.
And Cheri, do you want to add to that story?
No, that's exactly how we came together. And I don't think that I even realized fully the 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 depth of what was in this book until working with other people about it. And it was probably 3 months later when I was working with a client, and all of a sudden I knew this intellectually that it's all about our conversations, but I suddenly had this whole body kind of spiritual awakening that, oh my God, everything is conversation. Everything we do comes through conversation, and every one of those conversations either moves us towards what we want in life and relationships or away. There aren't any neutral ones.
Yeah.
And for me, that was like, oh, maybe we didn't write this book. Maybe we just said yes and it came through us. Because it is really the simple on the other side of the complexity of communication. On the other side of it is just really simple.
And I want to just add one thing, because we talked about this before you started recording, but think about this. A conversation can unite us or divide us, can drain us or can energize us.
And we're seeing that in real life these
Yeah.
days.
So much. Yeah. All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. So you're making me, so thank you for sharing that story. I love to hear how people connect. And I am a huge fan of collaborating and connecting people. And so I love that you two came together to create this. And it's making me think about my human resources days too, where, oh my gosh, 90% of my day would be spent coaching leaders on how to have conversations with people on their team. And it
Yep.
was so funny how often I just had to say, it sounds like you need to have a conversation with them.
Yes.
It's
And so,
everywhere.
Yeah,
it's a
so
simple answer, but
it,
it's not
it
often thought
is.
of.
No, and we often have the conversation with the other person in our head and we answer for them. And we're making it up
Yeah.
instead of with them. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend who's a great leadership coach, and she said to me one time, I want you to ask yourself, could you take that conversation in your head to Judge Judy? Is it based on fact? Would
Great.
Judge Judy throw you out? And so I use that as like a little test to go, wait, did I make this up or is this actually happening?
Oh, that's great. That's a great metaphor. We
I,
we have used the metaphor of that every one of us is a graduate of MSU making stuff up. So the same exact thing.
Oh my gosh, that's so important too, especially how much time, our brains are calculators, right? And so they're constantly thinking and calculating and coming up with schemes and little plays and expositions of conversations that have never happened or probably will never happen. And we lose so much energy in that space. And
We do.
so it's so important to just have a conversation, have the courage to have the conversation. So I'd love to hear more about appreciative inquiry. Can you tell the listeners what that is and sort of, I'll say, like, how does it work?
So appreciative inquiry, it emerged in the 1980s when a graduate student named David Cooperrider was getting his PhD in organizational behavior. And he and a group of graduate students in his cohort had surveyed the Cleveland Clinic um, to basically to identify dissertation topics. And when he brought the data back to his major professor, it looked like there were all sorts of problems with leadership, with teamwork, with organizational design, behavior issues. And David Cooperrider, who's the graduate student's name, his major professor said, this can't be accurate data. The Cleveland Clinic is one of the best clinics in the country. And this data makes it look like it's completely dysfunctional. And that led them to look at the questions that they had asked. And of course, the graduate students were looking for a problem, an issue that they could do their research on so they could fix it, because that was the model. And that led them to begin to explore. So, what would it look like if we asked them questions about why they are as highly functional as they are? And so they just did a handful of questions with a group around that and looked at the two different data points, sets of data points, and they looked like completely different organizations. And David's dissertation professor said, this is your dissertation topic. And David went on to do lots of initial research into, who else has discovered that, what you're focusing on creates a difference. And he uncovered this wealth of information in the area of positive psychology, medicine, education, even at sports athletics, that shows that when you focus on where you want to go and you focus on what's working, you get more of that.
Hmm.
And then he went on to eventually create what he called appreciative inquiry. And it's about asking questions and being curious, exploring what is it that works in an organization when we're at our best. What are our strengths? What are we doing? How do we make sure we do more of that? And where is it that we want to go? And are there any pockets in the organization that are already operating that way? And what can we learn from them? So it's kind of like the reverse of doing, people do root cause analysis into a problem. And instead, appreciative inquiry does root cause analysis into flourishing,
Hmm.
into what works when we're at our best, or if we want a highly collaborative team, let's go explore and learn from the most effective collaborative teams. What are they doing? What are the conditions? What are their behaviors? What are the structures that support them? And then when you begin to implement change, you know that your change processes that you're implementing will work, as opposed to, okay, we're guessing, here the problem is, we're going to guess at um, what's going to be a fix. And then if it doesn't, you have to guess at something else. The other thing appreciative inquiry does is, if you think about focusing on problems and fixing problems and then check in with your energy, and then think about exploring and looking into when people are at their best and what's working and how do we do more of that, and check in with your energy. Appreciative inquiry really unleashes an amazing amount of energy and creativity in people when they talk together using that approach. Do you want to add anything, Jackie? In the past, it's been an organizational change methodology, a systems change methodology, and focused around something called 5Ds. Do you want to share that, Jackie?
Sure. I love what Cheri said, and in a sentence, to just summarize it, appreciative inquiry is the best of what was, is, and is possible. And what became very popular in the business environments is what Cheri mentioned, is the 5D cycle. So think about this is I'll use the example of communication, but define a topic that you want to study, communication. So you define it, you discover, dream, design, and deliver it. Those are the 5Ds. So if I asked you about communication, I don't know if you're going to be positive or negative of what's going on. I don't know what your answer is going to be. And we could have a depreciative conversation about all the ways we poorly communicate. But if I bring our team together and say, we need to discover, how do we have the best continuous connective communication? And we discover it, we dream what it would look like if we had exemplar communication. We design a communication system so that we're continuous and connective with our communication, and then we deliver on it. That's the 5D cycle. And the 5D cycle has worked at teams levels with 10, 20, 40 people, and what they call appreciative inquiry summits. And Cheri has worked on some really large summits with 500 or 1,000 people in the room, having a choreographic conversation about what do you want more of. And that's what that's the 5D. So if you research appreciative inquiry and the 5Ds, there's a lot of information out there on that.
Wow. What have you seen shift in organizations once you start to activate this AI, this new AI?
Energy, just energy, resilience. People are creative, they're uplifting, and there's movement forward, and there's collaboration. That's what you can feel it.
Mm.
And there's also this sense of, when people are being asked for their ideas or their best experiences around something, that there's suddenly this, and this is part of, I think, the energy that comes forward, but this sense of, the thing that makes me worthy can come forward into this organization, that I'm being valued, my voice matters. And so people connect and feel more uplifted. If you've got an organization where there is a disengagement, I would say the first thing you need to look at is, what's the nature of the conversations you're having?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The culture is so radiant for people in conversations worth having using AI.
I can totally see that, especially in organizations where open communication is valued, where people are encouraged to speak up and talk about things, especially things that are hard. You have to have some tough conversations in environments where, if you want it to work well, you have to be willing to look at something and say,
Question I
okay,
don't know the answer to. So I'm going to ask you, tell me what you think. Tell me about a best practice. How might we? I'm going to ask you your wishes. So generative questions really widen the view, and they generate possibilities. They build trust, they surface assumptions. That's the first practice is learning how to ask a generative question. Sure. Do you want to tell her about positive framing, the second practice?
Sure. Positive framing is basically talking about what you want instead of what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
And that can sometimes be difficult for people. They can say, I don't like this. And if you say, well, what is it that you want? Instead, people are like, well, that's not so clear. So that's again where generative questions can come into play by really asking the kinds of questions that help people flip. And we actually call this flipping, the flipping technique, asking generative questions to look at, okay, let's just look at the positive opposite of what the thing is you don't want. And now let's explore that positive opposite. If the positive opposite were true, what would be visible? What would you experience? What would we see? And from that point, people can say, oh, so for example, if we've got a toxic environment, the opposite of that is we have a healthy environment. Well, if we had a healthy environment, what would we see? What would be visible? Well, people would connect, they'd be engaged, they'd want to come to work, we would have low turnover. And then after all those things surface, to be able to say to somebody, so which of those are the thing that you most want, or the couple that you most want? So it helps people move towards, okay, let's have a conversation around a cultural environment where people can't wait to show up for work. And now you're having a conversation about, when has that happened in our organization in the past? What is that like for us? What conditions make that possible? What do we need to change? What would it look like if tomorrow when we showed up, that's what it was like all day long? What can we do today to make that our reality?
That's so powerful. That's so powerful. It's making me think of so many things right now. One is my own experience in the corporate environment in human resources for a very long time. Um, where it wasn't always a safe environment sometimes to ask questions when you needed clarity on something, or to just create the space where you could go to somebody and say, I'm struggling with this thing because I'm not super clear on it, and to not feel like you could actually get what you needed in order to do your job safely. And then it's making me think about, it's taken me all the way back to my Bible study too, where we talk about the languages got scattered and it became hard to communicate with each other. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, this has been an issue since the beginning. We
Yes.
need a class on how to communicate with each other. It's so
Um,
important. It's so
yeah.
important. Um, so the question that's coming up for me now, or not really a question, more of an observation, I think, is um, the power of the generative question. I think, like you said, Jackie, comes from a place of curiosity, and that just comes from, I think, compassion and kindness for people to sit with someone and say, "Oh, tell me more about that. When you said this, what were you actually, trying to communicate?" Or just creating environments for people where they feel comfortable sharing themselves and who they are. And it's also making me think about the clients that I work with who are, not only are they not asking these questions of other people, but they're not asking these questions of themselves. And so, Cheri, to your point of, you ask somebody, what is it that you value, or what is it that you want more of, and we don't know the answer to it.
Right.
Yeah. Your words carry energy. So my words can lift you up or push you down. And then
Mm-hmm.
my tone can either lift you up or push you down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how do we start to use generative questions in our day to day? What are some ways that the listeners can start to activate the positive framing and generative questions? Just it's starting now.
Um, so one of the first things that we would suggest is, before you use any communication, tune in, find out where you are. So pause. This is especially important if you've been triggered by a situation or a comment somebody has made. Just pause. And that pause stops the kind of that downward conversation. And then take a deep breath, which activates your parasympathetic nervous system, and that starts to calm your system down. Because if we are triggered and we're about to speak, we are going to be speaking from our reptilian brain, from our fight or flight centers, and that's going to cause a depreciative conversation. We call it a below the line conversation. And so to pause, take a deep breath to kind of ground yourself. It may take 2 or 3 deep breaths. And that typically can give you enough time to begin to regulate your nervous system so that you can access curiosity. And if you can access curiosity, you now have access to your executive functions in the brain. And you can get curious about yourself, like, oh, where did I go? What caused that? Or what is that about? Did I make something up, or was there some facts there? And to really even ask yourself, what is it I want now in this moment? Do I want to really understand the other person? Do I want to control them? Do I want to, just to take a look at what's motivating? What's the emotion or the mindset that's driving my communication, and what do I want it to be? Do I want to be more curious and open about what actually did that person mean when they said what they said? Maybe I took it the wrong way. Or maybe I don't agree with them, but I can be curious. I don't have to be convinced. We don't have to agree. And how do I be curious in a respectful way that honors and has compassion and genuine curiosity? Or do I want to ask questions that instead of going after the other person, I'm going after where's our common ground?
Mm.
I ask a question about that will help us unite and discover those things we share, to widen our view of each other instead of narrowing it. And so it really begins with that pause, breathe, get curious first about where you are and what you would like to do with the next sentence that comes out of your mouth. And one of my favorite questions for myself is, what don't I know?
Mm.
And when I ask myself that, there's always a lot I don't know. And then I can say, well, what am I most curious about right now?
Mm.
And if I'm still feeling judgment about the other person, I need to take a few more breaths because that's going to come through in my tone and my probably my tenor of my question. And then the other person's going to respond to that, because we respond to one another's non-verbal much more than we do the verbal.
Our energy and how we're showing up. Yeah.
Yes. So I think just getting genuinely curious and with an openness is the place to start, with asking generative questions. What am I curious about? What don't I know?
You're not asking a gotcha question. You're not asking a question you know the answer to, or a simple yes or no. You want to hear the story. You want to,
Yeah.
what Cheri talks about, which your listeners might be familiar with, it's like emotional intelligence. When you tune in, tuning in is, am I aware of where am I, my emotions? And am I also other aware of the person? And you can control your conversations. And that's, I think, the power. And language is socially constructed. So we're teaching you about the other AI called Appreciative Inquiry, 2 simple practices of generative questions and positive framing. And Cheri just said the powerful nature of tuning in before you jump into trying these practices so that it is genuine and authentic.
Hmm. How do you think having these kinds of conversations help us live more, I'm going to say radiant lives, but really I think it's, how do you think these questions help us connect to our own um, like inner knowing, our own spirits, and then connect with other people at a deeper level? Because what I'm going to pause that question and just say what I'm hearing is so powerful that you're activating mindfulness practices in
Mhm.
these conversations with people. The pause, the breath, the curiosity, the um, you know, act as if you're experiencing that person for the first time, right? Like what would be different if you saw them um, in as yourself? I think that's so important. So, why are these questions? Why is this so important today, especially?
Well, I think these two practices are really easy to practice on others, to ask you questions and I can listen. I think the most challenging is to be kind and curious and conscious about yourself. And you can strengthen your conversation muscle if you really practice this on yourself. Um, that's the hardest. It's easy to
Hmm.
do this in organizational life with other people. And I think when you begin to do it, um, this is really heart centered. You feel in your heart, you feel the energy. You know when you're in a negative conversation or a positive conversation with yourself, or it's appreciative or depreciative. It's your
Hmm.
body. As Cheri said, it takes over. So it's a
Hmm.
very healthy way to live, to learn to ask questions that are going to generate new ways of thinking, new ways of knowing, energy.
If I could add to that, I think, especially from a spiritual place, I think so often in our culture, we've been, or at least in Western culture, I'll say, um, we've been raised to do it the right way, be um, be acceptable. Um, so it's we're also, and that's part of the programming in our brain, is to stay safe, make sure you belong, don't do anything to rock the boat. And so there, so often we are interacting with one another in a non, we're being authentic, but it's through the a place of fear and protection that we're being authentic. And so our genuine, authentic self, which comes from a place of love and openness and connection, we don't get to show the world because we're too afraid we might get,
Hmm.
booted out of the community, and then we're alone and the brain goes, die. Um, and and when you begin to really get curious and ask generative questions and use positive framing, it it shifts not only your internal fight or flight, you're no longer coming from that place of protection, and you're also not triggering that in another person. And so our authentic beings with our full potential can show up in the interaction, and we begin to be able to be more vulnerable, more open, more trusting of other people, because there's this genuine curiosity and the genuine wanting to include whoever is present, because there isn't a reason to exclude or push away um, or try to be better than or have to get it right, because there's this recognition that, boy, this whole thing about being in life is complex and ambiguous, and we're all just trying to figure it out. And we can do that by asking generative questions with each other, and focusing on what is it that we want together. If we want to create a world that works for everybody, there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. What you just made me think of too when you said we sort of greet each other or from that place of fear, or if we don't ask questions, it's because we're holding on to some desire to be accepted or to be acknowledged or what have you. It makes me think that we greet each other from a place of woundedness. We show up with as much energy as we have to offer, and we look for that not to be made worse, right? And so we don't
Yes.
always show up authentically if there's the risk or the fear of not being accepted or not being welcomed into the community.
Yes.
That's so important. I think what's your vision for conversations worth having? I'm sure you can see, because you're vision holders, right? Like the world would be so much of a better place if we could just have these incredible conversations with each other. What's your plan? What's the next step for this work?
So I think one of the things we are really focused on in our work, and we didn't start out with this as our mission at all. We started out to write a book for the people and then let it take its own course. Um, and then we had people saying, this is really simple, but it's not very easy. Could you offer training? So we said, yeah, we could do that. And then we had people taking the training said, wow, I'm a trainer or I'm a coach and I really want to offer this to other people. Could you do certification? And we were like, we can do that. And we suddenly began to see that there was this possibility of empowering more and more people to change the cultures of organizations, families, schools. And so, how do we support that movement of bringing more and more people, not only coaches and trainers and other consultants, but how do we work with organizations in ways that the organization itself, now the leadership is empowered, all of the people are empowered, and then internally they have a cohort of people who train and onboard everybody with this is the way we do communication here. And so we know the two of us cannot do this on our own, but if using today's war language, an army of people who have this same awareness and commitment and passion can create a world that works for everyone. It moves us out of a fear-based world and into a more loving, compassionate world where there's nothing stopping everybody and everything in this world from thriving. Nothing except for ourselves.
I hear
Yeah.
that.
I get exhausted by the blaming, the shaming, the negativity, whether I see it at work or in the media. And to imagine if you could teach people to really tune in to say, oh, I've gone below the line, pause, and I know how to pause, and then I can get back up to the line and say, I really want to do over this conversation and begin to frame this is what I'm hoping for, and ask generative questions that you can control the way you're having conversations, even with really negative people. And if you begin to ask them generative questions, they're going to pause and say, well, you're asking me what I want. You're asking me what I think. That I think we can learn to change our world one conversation at a time.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I love this so much, and I think the one thing we haven't talked about a lot is just the practice of listening to each other. I know that
Yes.
that's kind of a given when you're having a conversation, but it's not always actually.
No, not at all.
Yeah. I remember I did my coach training a few years ago, and it was at the very first weekend, and I think that we learned active listening. And I got back to work that Monday, and all of a sudden I had this keen awareness that people talked over each other and interrupted each other constantly, and it drove me crazy.
Yes.
We have a
Um,
story in the book on that one too.
Oh yeah.
That exact one, yes,
Oh
happening
my
to
gosh.
somebody.
Well, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. You're also making me think I have this really, really good friend. She and I work together in human resources. And what I really loved about the way that she communicated, and I started to pick up some of her, um, I don't know, like her skill or like even just her, what's it called? Like her nuance, I guess. She would sort of and not dictate, she would sort of narrate her thought process. And
Mm.
so she would say things like, I'm pausing because I'm thinking about what you just said, and I want to reply mindfully, but I also am running on 2 hours of sleep, and I'm not in the right mindset to give you an answer right now. And I just loved
Yes.
that
Yep.
so
Yeah.
much because there was no question where she was.
Yeah.
And that was so powerful that I started to use that now in my own world where I'm like, you know what? Let me just take a minute and give you some context for where I am right now, monitoring my energy and being open about it, sharing it with you so you know where I am. And so we can have a productive conversation about it. So
Absolutely.
powerful.
It really is sharing that backstory, because otherwise people are going to make it up. They're going to sense there's something else going on and they'll make it up.
MSU,
And
right?
Yep,
yeah.
exactly.
And you know, and that's the subtitle in the book, using appreciative inquiry to fuel productive and meaningful engagement. That in the two practices with the tuning in is that conversation worth having.
Uh, well, I want to encourage the listeners to practice this immediately in their own lives and see what shifts. You know, there's so much, you know, Cheri, like you said, there's absolutely no reason why our world can't be better than it is. There's zero reason why. And it's up to each of us individually, I think, to show up and to share that that space with each other and ask those generative questions and um, and just be more positive in general
Yep.
about things. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here. I love chatting with you both. Can you tell us where people can find you online and how they can work with you?
Sure. So the website, the short way to it is www.cwh.today, or you can spell out conversations worth having today. So if you go to our website, there's a blog. You can read lots of examples of positive framing and generative questions. We just launched a CWH Foundations course, which is $49. It's the on-demand, self-directed that will dive deeper into what we talked about, plus the appreciative inquiry principles. We do virtual boot camps. We do on-demand boot camps for the people that want self-directed learning. We work with organizations at the org level who want custom training brought into their organization. You'll see our certified trainers on there. So I like to say that our website is resource rich.
Mm,
And I think we created a coupon for you for the CWH Foundations course. So if any of your listeners are interested in taking that course, they can use Radiant Spirit as the coupon code, and it gives them 30% off um, the training.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. That's such a generous coupon, and I hope that the listeners take advantage of it. And I'll put all this information in the show notes. Is there anything you want to leave the listeners with before we close out?
The one other thing that I just want to share is that we have been, based upon the Conversations Worth Having book, we've been creating these quick start guides to help people use the practices in a specific area. And the one that is just about to be ready for publication is a quick start guide for conversations with yourself to build resilience. And so if any of your listeners are really feeling beaten down about what's going on in life for them, that would be a great place to start.
Oh, I
Yeah.
love that.
And another thing, if you're not a reader, the book is actually on audio, and there's so many stories in there that I think you'll relate to at least half the stories in the book in your personal life or at work. And I think what you could ask yourself is, what conversation am I avoiding that I'd like to have, and how might I use these practices to just create something life-giving, beautiful, something transformational, whether it's in your family life, your community, or at work.
Hmm. Oh, that was such a great question to end on, because I think that's one of the things that we avoid so much. It makes me think of the A Course in Miracles. The question I always go back to is, what is the price you have not been willing to pay for peace, right? And
Yeah.
that conversation you've been avoiding might be keeping you from your peace, and so
Mhm.
it's time to figure that out. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for being here. I loved chatting with you, and I can't wait to share your work with the listeners. I know that it will be super inspiring for everybody.
Thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
me today on Your Radiant Spirit. Every conversation here is an invitation to go beyond the surface, to listen to what your soul has been whispering, and to step into the life you've been longing for. If you're ready to go deeper, to work in a way that's personal, creative, and profoundly transformative, you'll find ways to connect with me in the show notes. Whether it's through art, a guided session, or a fully immersive journey, you'll discover a space where your truth is seen and your next chapter begins. If this episode spoke to you, it would mean the world if you shared it with a friend, left a review, or subscribed so more people can discover the conversations we have here. Until next time, my friend, keep noticing the colors, the moments, and the nudges. They're all leading you home. And for now, take a breath, hold on to what resonated, and carry it with you into the rest of your day. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.